Hello friends, my name is Ty and I'm going to read to you. Today it's time for Chapter 2 of my first novel, Watch. Here we go. My God, that stinks, Dave McLeod said in disgust. Quinn could not help but agree as he looked down at the rotting body in the middle of the living room floor. He guessed the woman had been there a little over a week and was well into the various stages of decomposition. The body was lying on its back, its arms and legs splayed, and blood had pooled in the bottom portion of the body, causing it to turn black. Maggots had eaten the eyes and had gathered in the armpits and other creases close to the torso. The smell in the small, mobile home was unbearable, and both Quinn and Dave had Vicks Vapor Rub stuffed into their nostrils to ward off the stench. It was the first day shift, after they had taken off the remainder of the block of the shooting. Steve Falk had told them to take another block off, but Quinn had been so bored that he had suited up and come to work. He had not been surprised to see Dave in the office, dressed and ready to go when he'd arrived. Quinn had been hoping for a quiet day to get back into the rhythm of work and to spend some time on his investigational files that had gone untouched for the last 2 weeks. But shortly after he and Dave arrived at 6 o'clock that morning, Corporal Rafe had found them. Got a body in Highland Trailer Park, Rafe told them. A lady smelled a funny odor coming from her neighbor's unit when she got up for work this morning. Looks suspicious. Secure the scene until I can wake up the major crime knobs. Quinn looked down at the cadaver on the floor again. The term suspicious didn't really cut it. The walls of the trailer were covered in gouts of blood, and the body had several ragged wounds in the chest and abdomen. The apparent murder weapon, a large kitchen knife, was beside the door, where the killer had likely dropped it on their way out of the small dwelling. Dave had taken pictures to record the scene, careful not to disturb anything, while Quinn made detailed notes in a small leather notebook every street cop carried. The front door creaked open, and Sergeant Davis, followed closely by Rafe, came into the trailer. The sergeant was eating a blueberry muffin and did not seem at all bothered by the smell. "How's it going, guys?" Davis said around a mouthful of muffin. Good, except for her." Quinn tilted his chin towards the body. "How can you stand to eat in here?" Dave asked, making a disturbed face. The sergeant shrugged. "I've seen a lot of stinkers in the last 18 years. You get used to it." "Any ID on the body yet?" Quinn shook his head. "There's no history on the house, and I didn't start a neighborhood canvass yet. There was a woman's wallet on the kitchen table, but I didn't want to touch it until you got here." "All right," Davis said, rubbing at the day's growth of beard on his face. "You guys clear the residence?" "Yep," Dave said as he snapped a picture of the bloody knife. "First thing we did when we got here. No one else in the trailer. But there were 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom and some men's clothing in one of the closets." Davis nodded and scribbled in the ledger book. "Any idea when you guys are going to stop having dead bodies so I can finally go home and see my wife?" Quinn and Dave looked at each other, then back at the sergeant, but said nothing. Sergeant Davis waved them off. "Never mind, fellas. I'm just tired and acting like a prick. Good work so far. Give a copy of your notes to Rafe and I'll pick them up later. Dave, will you mind leaving the camera? We'll take some more pictures and take care of downloading the ones you took. My crew will call Iodent to process the scene and we'll take over from here." Quinn was only too happy to leave the cramped trailer. The smell was cutting through the paste in his nose and stabbing in the back of his throat. He and Dave stepped outside and blew their noses into the shrubs to remove the Vicks. "You know," Quinn said, I didn't think much of Davis when he first got here, but he's not half bad." "Yeah," Dave replied. "I wouldn't do his job for double the money. I'll bet he'll be divorced in another couple of years if he keeps doing this shit." Rafe stepped heavily out of the trailer and down the narrow steps. "There are a bunch of files waiting for attendance, guys, and Sandy is out on the road by herself. Write your reports for this quick so you can go give her a hand. I'll hold the door until the guys coming in for scene security get here." Quinn really had not done much in the murder scene, besides show up and confirm with dispatch there was a dead body inside. It would only take him a few minutes to write up the details of his action and send it through cyberspace to be added to the electronic file. As he and Dave walked back to their cars, heavy drops of rain started spattering against the asphalt driveway. Quinn hunched his shoulders and zipped up his uniform coat as icy drops fell down the back of his neck. "Is the weather always like this in fall?" he asked Dave. "I thought all coastal towns were supposed to have mild weather." Dave quickened his pace towards his car. "We always get lots of rain, but it's never this cold. A couple more degrees and it'll be snowing instead of raining." He chuckled. "And you want to see chaos? Wait till you get a look at the streets when the snow hits the ground and stupid people with shitty tires try driving in it. It's an absolute circus." Quinn pulled his car key from behind his belt, unlocked his door, and slid into the car as the wind picked up and the rain fell harder. He shook the water off his hands and picked up the microphone of his police radio. "Resolution, this is Charlie 1, he said as he keyed the mic. "Go ahead, Charlie 1, came the reply. "I'm 10-8, the code for being clear and available for a call. 10-4, Charlie 1, I've got a break and entered a Radio World. Occurred overnight. I'll send you the file." Quinn hung up the mic and dropped the car into gear as the screen of his computer flashed and the dispatch ticket for the file arrived. Radio World was a small independent electronics shop owned by a man named Eric Wong, who had been a fixture in Resolution for the last 50 years, ever since they had actually sold nothing more than radios and television. Wong had run it since the early 70s, when he took it over from his father and worked out of the same ancient storefront in the old business district. He had managed to stay open despite the intrusion of a new Walmart, due to a loyal customer base and a superior service. The only reward for his resilience was a monthly break into his store. The drive from the trailer park to the downtown area only took a few minutes, and soon Quinn pulled into the angled parking spot in front of the store. He got out of his car and walked across the wide red brick sidewalk, his shoulders hunched against the rain. He saw Eric Wong sweeping up piles of broken glass off his showroom floor. Wong looked up as Quinn entered, and the old-fashioned bell above the door jingled. "Hiya, Quinn," he greeted. Quinn had been here so many times the last 6 months they were now on a first-name basis. "What did they take this time?" Quinn asked as he surveyed the damage and flipped open his notebook. "Not much, actually," Wong said, leaving the broom against the broken display case and resting his hands on his hips. "Since the last break-in, I've bolted down all the display pieces and put a concrete door on the storeroom. All they really managed to do was break all my cases and ruin the lock on the back door." "Did you get any video?" Quinn asked and pointed with his pen at the numerous surveillance cameras around the store. "Ah," Wong said, wagging his finger. "I almost forgot. The only thing they managed to do, with any competence, was break into my office and steal their surveillance system. That's the only thing I forgot to bolt down." It wasn't particularly funny, but Quinn snorted at the irony as he jotted down the information in his notebook. "Have any of your neighbors installed video yet?" Wong shrugged. "I know that the bakery over there," he jerked his thumb over his shoulder, "doesn't have it. I don't know about the other place," he pointed to the wall behind Quinn. "The vitamin store that was there went out of business and a new place opened up a couple weeks ago." "A new place, huh? What do they sell?" Books and stuff, I think." "All right," Quinn said, closing his notebook. "If you can give me the serial number of the surveillance recorder, I'll add it to the system. I'll go and see if your new neighbor thought to install cameras on our back door." "I called for the ident guys to come and check for fingerprints, but we had a big file this morning, so I might not make it today." "Oh, yeah, I heard about the body in the trailer on the news when I was driving in after the alarm company called." "Any idea what happened?" "Nothing that I can share yet. I'll be back in a few minutes." Eric Wong nodded and went back to sweeping the glass off the floor. Quinn stepped out the front door and turned left, walking the few yards to the front of the neighboring store. The main window had been recently cleaned and a new sign in it that read, "Nature's Song, Books and Gifts." There was no open sign on the window, but the door was unlocked and he pushed his way inside, stopping to wipe his feet several times on the woven welcome mat. The interior of the small shop smelled heavily of incense. The wall to Quinn's right was lined with bookshelves from floor to ceiling. The shelves were filled with titles like Simple Magic, Common Rituals, and Spells for the Pragmatic Witch. The shelves to the left were filled with candles in myriad shapes and sizes, crystals and rocks, mirrors, large decks of cards, and all sorts of general mystical paraphernalia. There was a small counter in the left corner with a jar of candy and an archaic cash register. Quinn looked around and guessed a place like this would not have invested much money in video surveillance. "I'll be right with you," a woman's voice called from the back of the store. In a few moments, the owner of the voice stepped through the beaded curtain that separated the shop proper from the room in the back. Quinn almost dropped his notebook when he saw a familiar mop of blonde hair. She did not pause upon seeing him, but smiled. "Constable Sullivan. I had a feeling I'd be seeing you eventually." He had his mouth open to ask who she was, but the comment made him falter. And he looked at her for several moments, his mouth agape. What?" he finally managed. She smiled again, the lines in the corner of her mouth only serving to make her smile wider, her pale blue eyes shining above it. Never mind. What can I do for you?" He stared at her, Eric Wong's break-in forgotten. "You were at the shooting scene last week," he said. She nodded, still smiling politely. Quinn asked the next question they could think of. "Who are you?" She extended a slender arm covered in bracelets and bangles. "I'm Autumn Donnelly." Quinn shook the hand she offered, still wondering where he knew her from. He remembered seeing her when he saw her at the scene. He He remembered recognizing her when he saw her at the scene of Scooby's shooting, but he could not remember from where. "I've seen you before, haven't I?" he asked. "I mean, before the shooting last week?" She nodded, her smile fading and turning sad. "I saw you at the high school, when that boy lost himself." Recognition flooded Quinn as soon as the words left her mouth. He had been leaning against the wall of the school, a few minutes after he had had to take a boy's life, trying to maintain his composure and keep the contents of his stomach down. A crowd had not gathered yet, but he looked around to make sure no one was watching him. At the corner of the soccer field, standing beneath the bordering trees that had been who he now knew as Autumn Donnelly, watching him. He had ducked back inside the school hallway, not wanting anyone to see him, and had not thought about her again until she had appeared at Scooby's shooting. Dozens of questions spun in his mind. Autumn stood, her hands folded in front of her, waiting patiently. "What were you doing there, at both shootings?" he asked finally, his eyes narrowed. "I felt their pain and had to discover the source." She saw the look of confusion on his face and smiled again. "I'm what you might call sensitive. I get feelings sometimes." "You're a mind reader?" Quinn asked, skeptical. "No, nothing quite so exceptional as that. I can feel energies or emotions when they're especially strong. In the incidents I saw you at, the pain and sorrow experienced by the souls of those involved are so extreme that their spirits shine off them like a beacon. They're easy to see if you're looking." "You're saying that you could feel their pain and that's why you came to the 2 shootings?" "Yes," was her simple reply. "Not only their pain, but that of those around them, you included." Quinn said nothing for several moments, simply looked at her, his mind working. Feelings and energies were not concepts he was used to discussing. "When I walked through your door, you said you thought you'd be seeing me. How did you know that?" She shrugged. "Just a feeling I got. I knew you were wrapped up in this once you were the one who responded to both incidents." "What do you mean, wrapped up in this?" She tilted her head and pursed her lips slightly, considering her words. "Have you noticed, Constable, that there is something deeply wrong in Resolution? Something that goes beyond the simple coincidence of 2 violent acts occurring close together?" Quinn crossed his arms and thought for a moment. He realized the slender woman was right. The call volume, violent calls especially, had increased dramatically in the last month, starting with the shooting at Resolution High School and culminating most recently with the murder of a woman in the trailer. There was indeed something wrong in Resolution, but he had not been conscious of it until now, and did not have the foggiest notion of what it was. "So, what do you think it is?" he asked finally, one corner of his mind wondering who he had got himself involved with in this conversation. "Resolution has a deep history for a place so new," she said. "The land it's built on has a spirit all its own, a deep energy that runs through the very bedrock. It's not good or bad, it just is. Combine that with the events that have happened here, the gold rush, fortunes won and lost, the conflicts and violence between men, the lives that have been created and irrevocably changed. This land has developed a depth of feeling as strong as an aura as I've ever felt in a place. That's what drew me here. And, as with all things, old memories give birth to new energies. They're not always good." Quinn frowned, not entirely sure what to make of her explanation, and not sure he was prepared to accept such an obscure answer, when something else occurred to him. "You said before, when the boy lost himself. What does that mean?" "Did you know the homeless man you had to shoot?" Quinn nodded. Yeah, I talked to him a few times." Did he seem like someone capable of violence? Someone who would take a life?" "No," Quinn said, huffing his breath out through his nose. "I can't say he did." "I'm willing to bet that if you talked to the people who knew the boy at the school, they would say the same of him. These are people who are acting well outside of themselves, far beyond their character. Things like that don't happen suddenly. It either takes a great deal of time to effect the change or a drastic outside influence." So what are you saying, Quinn asked, doubtful. "That something in Resolution is making people do crazy shit?" Autumn folded her hands into the colorful skirt she wore, and looked down at them, then raised her eyes to Quinn's face. "What I'm saying is that you shouldn't discount any ideas of what's happening here. Don't let your police training or common disbelief completely rule your thinking in this. There's a reason that you were the one to respond to both those terrible incidents. If you let them, your instincts will guide you to the right decision." "Reason?" Quinn asked. "What possible reason could there be I had to shoot 2 people?" He snorted and looked away, shaking his head. He had come in here to ask about surveillance video and instead was being down a path of random philosophical theory by a woman that looked like she belonged in a booth at a county fair. When troubles like this come to a place, a warrior is often chosen, someone who stands to defend his people. Yeah, well, I didn't ask to be chosen for any of this shit. I never wanted to fucking kill anyone, Quinn said, blood rising to color his face. Your compassion, your reluctance to take life, is probably exactly why you were chosen. Quinn stared at her for several moments, once again unable to form a response. Finally, he shook his head. You know what? I don't mean to be a prick, but I can't listen to this anymore. Please excuse me. He turned for the door. Autumn stepped forward, close enough she had to look up to see his face, and laid her hand on his arm. He stopped and looked back at her. I'm sorry, Quinn. I don't have a gift for words, but I know what I'm telling you must be hard to believe. She paused and appeared to be thinking about what she wanted to say. Look, you don't have to believe anything I said, but please be careful. Leave your mind open and don't discount anything. If I'm right, then this is not the end of the trouble here, and it's going to get much worse. I'm sure that if you start looking, you'll find this goes much deeper than you thought. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back at her face. She removed her hand and he stalked towards the door. I'll be here if you need anything, he heard her say as he stepped onto the sidewalk. Quinn walked to his car and got in. He sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, watching the rain pound on the windshield while he allowed disbelief to get in a fist fight with confusion in his head. Warriors? Chosen? It was all too much to buy. He felt like he should go back to the store and arrest Autumn Donnelly under the Mental Health Act for being bloody crazy. But, as he sat there, disbelief and confusion were joined by a bunch of questions who brought beer, set up lawn chairs, and showed every intention of staying a while. What if she was right? What if there was something in resolution making people crazy? The incident with the kid at the school, again with Scooby, and now a week-old murder, certainly left more questions than answers. There didn't seem to be any conventional explanation for it all. And he had been told by the other members of the detachment that there had been more than 5 years since the last time anyone had died violently in Resolution Cove. Now there had been 2 shootings and a murder in the space of a month. Quinn drummed his fingers against the top of the steering wheel and rubbed his chin with his other hand. There had to be an explanation for all this that didn't involve mysticism and mumbo-jumbo. As the questions drank all the beer and started to beat the shit out of his disbelief and confusion, he put the car into gear, turned the windshield wipers up high, and drove away from Radio World. The break-in forgotten. Quinn walked in the general duty pit at the office, shaking the water from his patrol jacket, and sat heavily in his chair. Dave McLeod sat at his desk and peered over the cubicle divider. What's going on, dude? He asked. You look pissed. Perturbed, I think, is more like it. What's up? Dave asked and walked around the divider and sat down on the edge of Quinn's desk. Quinn thought for a moment of saying nothing and keeping this to himself, but Dave had been Quinn's workplace confidant since he arrived at Resolution Detachment and he trusted him implicitly. Besides, Dave was from Newfoundland, and East Coast sensibilities often shed new light on difficult subjects. And Quinn took a deep breath and told Dave everything that was said in Autumn Donnelly's shop. Woman's off her fucking gourd, Dave said when Quinn was finished, a typical Newfie observation. Yeah, Quinn said, tapping his pen on his desk, as he reclined in his chair. That's what I thought too, but I wonder if there might be something to it. Not a thing, man, Dave said, not a trace of doubt in his face. Look at this realistically. This woman is spouting off this foolishness about spirits and feelings and magic rainbows and shit. Next thing you know, she'll be telling you she has a leprechaun in her basement and she's married to Bigfoot and she knows where Jimmy Hoffa is buried. Scooby and this kid went crazy, sure, but there is a reason for it that doesn't involve magic and silliness and mystical feelings. Yeah, Quinn said. I guess you're right. Of course I am. Don't be foolish, Dave said, grinning and looking extremely pleased with himself. Quinn felt better after consulting with Dave, but still not completely convinced. As he sat, deliberating, Charles Rafe hulked his way out of the corporal's office, flipping through a gray file folder in his hand. I talked to the major crime nuppies today, he said to Quinn and Dave. They gave me Scooby's autopsy report. What does it say? Dave asked. Absolutely sweet fuck all, Rafe said, closing the file. Quinn sat forward in his chair. What do you mean? I mean, it doesn't give us anything at all. No explanation. Nothing. Rafe threw the file folder onto Quinn's desk. There was alcohol in his system, and his liver was about to shut down. But there were no drugs in his system. No meth, no crack, no prescription shit. Nothing. Quinn picked up the file folder and opened it. He scanned the medical examiner's report quickly, and only confirmed what Rafe had said. There was nothing medically that would account for Scooby's behavior. So where does this leave us? Quinn asked, dropping the file back on his desk. It doesn't leave us anywhere, son, Rafe said, rubbing his mustache. This investigation is closed. There isn't anything more to say. No further action required. Isn't anyone going to try and figure out why Scooby lost his fucking biscuit and tried to kill us? Dave asked. There isn't anything else to look for, Dave, Rafe growled. There is nothing in the autopsy to explain it, and it's not as though we can go dig him up and ask him now, is it? Besides, those major crime guys are going to be on this murder and aren't giving two shits about a dead homeless guy. He did not like it, but Quinn knew that Rafe was right. Scooby's story was written and cemented, and no one cared how it ended. Okay, what about that murder? Dave asked. Did they figure out who the woman is? Yeah, Rafe said. Her name is Susan Williams. At least that's what the ID in the trailer said. And who the trailer site is registered to. Any suspects? Quinn asked. They're looking pretty hard at her son, a sprout bag named Brandon Williams. He's got a record as long as my third leg for shit like drug possession and theft. The fingerprints on the possible murder weapon are his. Any record for violence? Dave asked. Nope, Rafe said, shaking his bald head. Not a thing. I think I've arrested him myself, likely more than once, and he was as meek as a kitten. He just stole everything that wasn't red hot or nailed down and promptly traded it for whatever drug he was doing that day. It's a big step to going from petty theft to killing your mom, Dave observed. A big step that would take an awfully large event to precipitate, Quinn thought, and he found Autumn Donnelly's voice ringing in his ears. That's Chapter 2. Next time we'll have Chapter 3. As always, I hope you liked that, and thanks for being here with me.